The unsolved death of Florence Deeks. Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. I'm Jay Nicoll of Nicoll Investigations. It's Tuesday, which means it's time for Historical True Crime Tuesday, where we unearth the forgotten stories of Ontario's past. Cases that have faded from headlines but not from memory. Today we're traveling back to 1928, to the quiet streets of Toronto, where a woman named Florence Deeks met a tragic and perplexing end. Officially, her death was ruled an accident, but the details and the whispers that followed tell a far more complicated tale. This is a story of a respected educator, sudden demise, a family's disbelief, and a mystery that has lingered for nearly a century. There's no time limit today, so settle in, grab a coffee, or maybe something stronger. Let's dive deep into the shadows of Ontario's history. Hello, I'm Jay Nicoll of Nicoll Investigations. This is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Section 1. The Discovery. It's August 17, 1928. The summer sun is high over Toronto, casting long shadows across the tree-lined streets of Hyde Park, a sprawling green oasis in the city's west end. The air is thick with the hum of cicadas and the distant clatter of streetcars along Bloor Street. In a modest two-story home in Indian Grove, a quiet residential street just north of the park, the day begins like any other for the Deeks family. But by mid-morning, everything changes. At around 10 a.m., a neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, is tending to her roses when she hears a scream pierce its stillness. It's coming from the Deeks house. She drops her shears and hurries across the lawn, her heart pounding. She knocks on the door, but there's no answer, just an eerie silence. Concerned, she peers through the front window and sees nothing unusual. But something feels wrong. Mrs. Carter fetches the local beat constable, Officer James McTavish, who arrives within an hour. Together they enter the unlocked house, calling out for the residents. Florence Deeks, a 64-year-old spinster, and her elderly mother, Melinda, who lives with her. The main floor is tidy. A teapot sits on the kitchen table, a half-read copy of the Globe newspaper folded neatly beside it. But as they climb the creaky wooden stairs to the second floor, a faint, acrid smell fills the air. In the upstairs bathroom, they find her. Florence Deeks lies crumpled on the tiled floor, her body partially slumped against the clawfoot bathtub. Her face is pale, her eyes half open, and her hands are clenched in a fist. Small gas heater, still hissing faintly, sits in the corner of the room. The window is closed tight, the air heavy with fumes. Officer McTavish shuts off the gas, throws open the window, letting in a rush of fresh air. He checks for a pulse, but it's too late. Florence is gone. Melinda Deeks, frail and hard of hearing, is found asleep in her bedroom down the hall, oblivious to the tragedy just steps away. The police cordon off the house, and soon the coroner arrives. Dr. Arthur Ellis, Toronto's chief coroner, conducts a preliminary examination. He notes a gas heater, a sealed room, and the absence of any visible injuries. His initial conclusion is straightforward. Carbon monoxide poisoning, likely accidental. Florence, he suggests, must have been using the heater to warm the bathroom and succumb to the silent killer. But as word spreads through the neighborhood, questions begin to swirl. Florence was a meticulous woman. How could she have made such a fatal mistake? And why was the heater on in the middle of a warm August day? Section 2. Who was Florence Deeks? To understand this mystery, we need to know the woman at its center. Florence Adeline Deeks was born on April 23, 1864 in Morrisburg, a small town along the St. Lawrence River in eastern Ontario. She was the second of 5 children born to George Deeks, a carpenter, and Melinda Simmons, a homemaker with a sharp mind and a love of literature. The Deeks family valued education. Florence excelled from an early age, showing a particular talent for writing and history. In her 20s, Florence moved to Toronto to pursue a career in education. She attended the Toronto Normal School, one of the province's premier teacher training institutions, and graduated with honors in 1886. She spent the next few decades teaching in the city's public schools, earning a reputation as a strict but inspiring educator. Her students remembered her for her vivid storytelling. She could bring the battles of the War of 1812, or the voyages of Samuel de Champlain, to life with a passion that captivated even the rowdiest classrooms. Florence never married, a choice that set her apart in an area where women were expected to settle down. Instead, she devoted herself to her work, her family, and her intellectual pursuits. By 1928, she had retired from teaching, but remained active in Toronto's literary circles. She was a member of the Canadian Authors Association and spent years working on a manuscript, a feminist history of the world titled The Web of the World's Romance. It was her magnus opus, a labor of love that she hoped would cement her legacy. Her personal life was quiet but rich. She lived with her widowed mother, Melinda, in the Indian Grove house they purchased in 1910. Two were close, sharing a love of books and music. Florence was an accomplished pianist and often played hymns for the local Presbyterian church. Neighbors described her as reserved but kind, always ready with a smile or a thoughtful word. She was a creature of habit. Up at dawn, cup of tea by 7 a.m., a daily walk through Hyde Park to clear her mind. But Florence wasn't without her struggles. In years before her death, she'd grown frustrated with her manuscript. She believed that H.G. Wells, the famous British author, had plagiarized her work in his 1920 book, The Outline of History. Florence had submitted her manuscript to Macmillan Canada in 1918, only to see it rejected, shortly before Wells published his strikingly similar work. She and her family launched a lawsuit against Wells in 1925, a bold move that drew attention across Canada. The case was ongoing in 1928 and the stress of it weighed heavily on her. Was this legal battle a factor in her death? Did it push her to a breaking point? Or make her a target? Section 3. The days before her death. Assuming on the days leading up to August 17, 1928. Florence's routine had been steady that summer. She spent her mornings writing, her afternoons visiting friends or tending to her mother, and her evenings reading by the fireplace. But in mid-August, something shifted. On August 14, 3 days before her death, Florence met with her lawyer, Samuel Jacobs, at his office on Bay Street. Jacobs later told police that she seemed agitated, pacing the room as they discussed the Wells case. Trial was set to resume in September, and new evidence, a letter from a Macmillan editor, had surfaced, suggesting her manuscript might have been shared with Wells. Florence was convinced this could turn the tide, but she also feared retaliation. "They'll stop at nothing to silence me," she reportedly said, though Jacobs dismissed it as hyperbole. The next day, August 15, a neighbor, Mr. Henry Lawson, saw Florence arguing with a man outside her house. The man was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and carried a briefcase. Their voices were raised, but Lawson couldn't make out the words. When he asked Florence about it later, she waved it off, saying it was just business. The man was never identified. On August 16, the day before her death, Florence visited the High Park branch of the Toronto Public Library. The librarian, Miss Clara Bennett, noted that she checked out a book on gas appliances. Curious choice for a woman who rarely cooked. Florence also seemed distracted, fumbling with her purse and glancing over her shoulder as she left. That night, Melinda later recalled, Florence was restless. She stayed up late, scribbling notes at the kitchen table, the gas lamp casting flickering shadows on the walls. Around midnight, Melinda heard her daughter mutter something about proving them wrong before heading upstairs. The next morning, Florence was up early. She made tea, read the paper, and told her mother she'd be taking care of some things upstairs. Melinda, hard of hearing, slow by age, stayed downstairs knitting by the window. She didn't hear anything unusual until Mrs. Carter's scream shattered the morning calm. Section 4. The Investigation and Discrepancies. The official investigation began swiftly. Dr. Arthur Ellis, the coroner, arrived at the Deeks' house by noon on August 17. He examined Florence's body, noting her pallor and the faint cherry red tint to her lips, classic sign of carbon monoxide poisoning. The gas heater, small portable unit, was still warm to the touch. Ellis tested it and found it functional but poorly ventilated. With a clogged flue, it could have trapped the deadly gas in the room. The police, led by Inspector William Murdoch, not the fictional detective but a real Toronto officer, searched the house. They found no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no blood, no forced entry. Florence's notes from the night before were scattered on the kitchen table, filled with references to Wells and Macmillan. Her manuscript sat untouched in her desk, a thick stack of handwritten pages. On August 20, an inquest was held in the Toronto Coroner's Court. Dr. Ellis testified that Florence had likely turned on the heater to warm the bathroom, perhaps to wash laundry or bathe, and was overcome by fumes. The closed window and door sealed her fate. The jury, after just 2 hours, returned a verdict of accidental death. Case closed, or so it seemed. But Florence's family wasn't convinced. Her brother, George Jr., a barrister in Ottawa, demanded a second look. He pointed out the oddities the inquest overlooked. First, the weather. August 17 was a balmy 26 Celsius. Why would Florence need a heater? Second, her hands. They were clenched, as if she'd been in pain or fighting something off, not peacefully unconscious. Third, the library book on gas appliances. Had she been researching the heater, or something else. George hired a private chemist, Dr. Harold Pierce, to test the heater. Pierce found that while the flue was indeed clogged, the carbon monoxide output was lower than expected. Enough to kill over hours, not minutes. Florence, he argued, should have noticed a smell, or felt dizzy and escaped the room. Unless he suggested she'd been incapacitated first. Then there was the mystery man. Neighbors confirmed Lawson's story, but the police dismissed it as unrelated. George believed the man might have been a Macmillan agent, or someone tied to Wells, sent to intimidate Florence, or worse. The family petitioned for a new inquest, but the Crown refused, citing insufficient evidence of foul play. The official file was sealed, and the case faded into obscurity. Section 5. Theories and Speculation. So what happened to Florence Deeks? Let's explore the possibilities. Theory 1. Accident. The official story holds that Florence died accidentally, a victim of a faulty heater and her own oversight. Supporters point to the coroner's findings and the lack of physical evidence of a crime. Maybe she was distracted by her work, or the summer heat masked the heater's warmth until it was too late. It's simple, tragic, and fits the facts, at least on the surface. Theory 2. Suicide. Some speculate that Florence, worn down by the lawsuit and her stalled career, took her own life. The gas heater could have been a deliberate choice, a quiet exit from a world that had disappointed her. Her late-night mutterings about proving them wrong might have been a final, despairing resolve. But her family rejected this outright. She was a fighter, not a quitter, and showed no signs of a suicidal intent. Theory 3. Murder. The family's theory is darker. Florence was murdered to silence her lawsuit against Wells. The mystery man could have slipped into the house, knocked her out, perhaps with chloroform, which would leave marks, and staged the scene with a heater. The clenched fists and low gas output support this, as does the timing, just weeks before a pivotal court date. But who was behind it? Wells himself? Macmillan? There's no hard proof, only suspicion. Theory 4. A literary conspiracy. A wilder idea ties Florence's death to a broader literary cover-up. Her manuscript challenged male-dominated histories. Her lawsuit threatened powerful figures. Could she have been a casualty of a patriarchal establishment, eliminated to protect Wells's reputation? It's far-fetched, but the sealed files and dismissed evidence keep it alive in some circles. Section 6. The family's fight for justice. Florence's death left her family shattered but determined. George Jr. spent years pushing for answers, writing letters to newspapers and politicians. In 1930, he published a pamphlet, The Truth About Florence Deeks, detailing the inconsistencies and calling for a reinvestigation. Sold modestly, but stirred enough interest that the Toronto Star ran a feature in 1931 dubbing it The High Park Heater Mystery. Melinda, heartbroken, died in 1932, still believing her daughter was wronged. The lawsuit against Wells collapsed without Florence's testimony, and he won by default. The manuscript, her life's work, was never published. Over the decades, the case slipped into obscurity, overshadowed by bigger crimes. But in 2008, a Toronto historian, Dr. Laura Bennett, rediscovered it while researching women writers. She found George's pamphlet in an archive and began digging. Her 2002 article in Ontario history revived interest, prompting a small online petition for the case to be reopened. The Toronto Police Service declined, citing the passage of time and lost evidence. Today, Florence's story lives on in true crime forums and local lore. A quiet reminder of a life cut short, a truth still buried. Section 7. Conclusion. Florence Deeks' death is a puzzle of missing pieces. Was it a tragic accident, a desperate act, or a calculated killing? The gas heater, the clenched fists, the mystery man. They hinted something more, but the answers are locked in the past. What lingers is the injustice. A brilliant woman fighting for her voice was silenced, whether by fate or foul play. Her family's quest for truth echoes the struggles of so many in Ontario's cold cases. Search for closure that never quite arrives. If you're listening and know anything about Florence's story, family tale, an old letter, forgotten clue, reach out. History isn't done with her yet. Thanks for joining us on this journey into Ontario's past, and Ontario cold cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. If this deep dive into Florence Deeks' mystery hooked you, subscribe and drop us a review. Next week we'll unearth another historical cold case from her shadows. Until then, keep questioning, keep listening, stay safe out there. The past has secrets, and we're here to find them. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Thank you. This has been Jay Nicoll of Nicoll Investigations, and this has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast.